Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadadi Swapadantikam Vande Ham Shri Gurau Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कंचना गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानु सुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री वासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। Okay, so I will share my screen. We are reading today. Welcome everyone to the morning Srimad Bhagavatam class at ISKCON, Naperville. We are reading from the third canto, fifth chapter, verse number 32 and 33. I'll recite the verse and the synonymous translation and for both the verses. Tamaso bhuta sukshmadir yata kham lingam atmanaha. Tamaso bhuta sukshmadir yata kham lingam atmanaha. Synonyms or the word-to-word meanings. Tamasa, from the mode of ignorance. Bhuta sukshma adi, subtle sense objects. Yataha, from which. Kham, the sky. Lingam, symbolic representation. Atmanaha, of the Supreme Soul. Translation: the sky is a product of sound, and sound is the transformation of egoistic ignorance. In other words, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. In the Vedic hymns, it is said, Etasmad Atmanaha Akasha Sambhutaha. The sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Those who are egoistic in passion and ignorance cannot conceive of the personality of Godhead. For them, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Text 33. Kalamayam shayogena bhagavat vikshitam nabhaha nabhaso anusritam sparsham vikurvan nirmame anilam. Once again. Kalamayam shayogena bhagavat vikshitam nabhaha nabhaso anusritam sparsham vikurvan nirmame anilam. Synonyms or the word-to-word meanings. Kala, time. Maya, external energy. Amsha yogena, partly mixed. Bhagavat, the personality of Godhead. Vikshitam, glanced over. Nabhaha, the sky. Nabhasaha, from the sky. Anusritam, being so contacted. Sparsham, touch. Vikurvat, being transformed. Nirmame, was created. Anilam, the air. Translation.
Can you move the screen, Prabhu, down? I don't know, it's not moving. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Sorry. Translation. Thereafter, the personality of Godhead glanced over the sky, partly mixed with eternal time and external energy, and thus developed the touch sensation from which the air in the sky was produced. Purport. All material creations take place from subtle to gross. The entire universe has developed in that manner. From the sky developed the touch sensation, which is a mixture of eternal time, the external energy, and the glance of the personality of Godhead. The touch sensation developed into the air in the sky. Similarly, all other gross matter also developed from subtle to gross. Sound developed into sky, touch developed into air, form developed into fire, taste developed into water, and smell developed into earth. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadadi Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Okay, so we have been discussing this discussion between Vidura and Maitreya Muni for a few days, and Vidura first inquired from Maitreya Muni, and a lot of questions in the form of inquiries, and Maitreya Muni, being pleased by those questions, he's now answering Vidura's question. And right now it is the part that he's explaining is the creation, how the creation happens. And the creation is, first there is it's been already explained that there is the Pradhan is there, and Mahavishnu, Lord Mahavishnu glances over the Pradhan, which then comes as Mahatattva. And interestingly, Mahatattva is explained in verse number 28 of this chapter. It says that the translation, thereafter the Mahatattva differentiated itself into, let me share my screen. Thereafter, the Mahatattva differentiated itself into many different forms as the reservoir of the would-be entities. The Mahatattva is chiefly in the mode of ignorance, and it generates the false ego. It is the plenary expansion of the personality of Godhead with full consciousness of creative principles and time for fructification. So we see that the verse number 28 says that the Mahatattva, which is also in one sense a transformation from Pradhan, but Mahatattva is chiefly in the mode of ignorance. And then from Mahatattva comes all the universe along with combined with the eternal time and the false ego. And then the false ego is further manifested into other elements. So now coming back to today's verse, sky is a product of sound, and sound is a transformation of egoistic ignorance. In other words, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. So from that Mahatattva then comes the universes with the elements separating, because earlier the elements are Mahatattva and Pradhan is a sum total of all the material elements in their unmanifested state, and now in the universe, when the universe is created, they are in their manifested state with the all the elements now separated, which then Lord Brahma has access to, and then he can use the passion energy to start creating. So first the sky comes, and then sky is a product of sound, and sound is the transformation of egoistic ignorance. So one of the striking thing was that Mahatattva is primarily in the mode of ignorance, and then within that we have all the other modes being created, the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So these three modes are primarily in the mode of in the material modes, and it is the base of it is primarily from the ignorance, because Mahatattva itself is primarily in the mode of ignorance. So we can only imagine what the Shuddha Sattva, or the actual mode of goodness in the spiritual world would be, because the mode of goodness that we see here is also coming from primarily mode of ignorance, because ignorance can also be divided into three parts: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So we can only imagine. Anyways, that was just sharing that something strike me. Now, even in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says in the 9th chapter, verse number 6, यथा काशस्थितो नित्यं वायु सर्वत्र गो महान तथा सर्वाणि भूतानि मत्स्थानीति upadharaya. The translation is, understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. And Prabhupada starts with the purport. I won't read the whole purport. I'll just read a portion of it, the first paragraph. For the ordinary persons, it is almost inconceivable how the huge material creation is resting in him, but the Lord is giving an example which may help us to understand. The sky may be the biggest manifestation we can conceive, and in that sky, the wind or air is the biggest manifestation in the cosmic world. The movement of the air influences the movements of everything. But although the wind is great, it is still situated within the sky. The wind is not beyond the sky. Similarly, all the wonderful cosmic manifestations are existing by the supreme will of God, and all of them are subordinate to that supreme will. As we generally say, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, everything is moving under His will. By His will, everything is being created, everything being maintained, and everything is being annihilated. Still, He is aloof from everything, as the sky is always aloof from the activities of the wind. So, in the Bhagavad Gita also, it's mentioned, Krishna says that, and I thought it's relevant to what we are discussing today. Here in this verse also, it said that sky is the product of sound. And as we can see from, and the title of today's class is the material creation comes from subtle to gross. So we see that the first part of the creation is sky, and sky comes from sound. And then comes the other creation, which is the touch. Touch creates air, and from after air comes form. Form creates fire, and then comes the water. So water is taste. So taste comes first, and from taste, water is produced, and after that, smell, gandha, is produced, and from that, earth is produced. So this is the sequence in which from subtle to gross, the elements are created. It is very hard to contemplate this, but I think I'll give an example how we can understand this a little bit, or at least I was able to understand. Anything that we do, any activity that we do, first originates in our subtle body. We have a conception or we have a plan in our mind. The intelligence and mind together, they produce a particular conception and a plan. And then it goes to the drawing board, and then in the form of sound and in the form of other ways, and then things are manifested. Let's say I want to create a house or a building. Now that house first originates in my mind. In fact, it's also mentioned in the 18th chapter Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, the place of action or the body, the performer, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the super soul are the 5 factors of action. So endeavor is the subtle form, and then the senses are involved, and then the performer is involved, and then the actions or the place of action or the body takes place. So any action, anything, any type of creation happens from subtle to gross, and this universe is not is following the same principle. And our ordinary activities, our ordinary so-called creation, of course, nobody is the creator. We are all assembler or just sub-creators, also happen from subtle to gross. The universe came from subtle to gross, which is being explained here. Our activities are also, they follow the same pattern from subtle to gross. And, I was taking the example of a house. So the desire comes to build a house, and then inside the mind, the different plans come, the vision comes, and it's all subtle. And then slowly it goes onto paper. I start making calls. I try to find some architects. Then a more the senses are involved, and then a better plan is created, physical plan is created, and the diagrams are there, the measurements are there, the costs come into picture, the plan comes, and then the other people are engaged, and the materials are bought, and then the house is created. The actual actions and the material elements are assembled, and the house is created. But it all originated in the subtle form, in the mind. So when this subtle form, the sky, is created, what is mentioned in text 32 is that the sky is a symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Prabhupada has mentioned in the past that the people, the uncivilized people, when they see amazing things in the sky, they bow down to the sky. So sky is, as mentioned in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, also 9.6, that sky is so vast that it holds everything within it. Even though the wind is unimaginably vast. Wind, as we know, is not just this windy year, but there are these winds with which even the planetary systems are being moved, and wind is everywhere in the sky, and that is contained within the sky. So there are a couple of things to understand here, that the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul, meaning for people who do not have this devotional service originated yet, and they are in the material stage of life, for them, sky is the representation of the Supreme Lord. when there is a lightning happening or there's something, and they bow down to the sky, to those supernatural phenomena. And Prabhupada, I believe I have heard and read also, he said that sky is blue in color because Krishna is blue in color, because the sky, the energy from the spiritual sky or coming from Mahatattva or the Brahma Jyoti is being transformed or is being reflected here in this, and therefore the sky is blue in color. So that also something that came to my mind. So I will stop here because I have a hard stop at 8 o'clock. I'll quickly summarize. The sky is the product of, actually I wanted to also show a diagram, but I think that's, let me quickly. Is it, my screen is shared or no?
No problem.
Okay. I'm not able to see my screen. Okay, never mind.
Now we could see Prabhu, just and again it
Oh,
stopped.
okay. So this is the 5 basic element properties. The sequence from ether or the sky. It's the sound is the origin of it. From that comes touch, and from touch comes air. From form comes fire. From taste comes water, and from smell or the gandha or odor comes earth. And each element inherits the properties from the previous elements above, and plus its own property. So for example, earth has the properties of all the others, meaning earth has the property of taste also, earth has the property of form also, earth has the property of touch also, and sound also. But water does not have the property of smell. Fire does not have the property of taste and smell, but fire does have the property of form, touch, and sound. So like this, from the subtle comes the gross, and also in the previous verses, what have been discussed is the false ego plus goodness is passion, and so on. And ultimately, it results in the 24 elements. So I'll stop here and quickly summarize. The sky is the product of sound, and from subtle elements, the gross elements comes, and it is a little hard to understand. But when we think about our own endeavors and our own mini creations, we see that they also take the form gross. And so is the universe. The universe has also been created from subtle element, from subtle to the gross. Along with the different external time and energy, and from that comes the touch sensation. And yeah, so I'll stop here and see if there are any discussions.
Thank you, Prabhu. I know these are very technical
Yeah.
verses. I mean, I was also trying to understand, I mean, the whole sequence. So I was just looking at the Bhagavad Subodhana. I mean, I think the picture, that image that you showed, I was just trying to understand the previous verses and this verse. What is the sequence, right? So, and the senses comes by the with mode of passion, right? So,
Yeah.
false again mode of passion, but then mode of goodness, the demigods comes. But then here, it looks like I could not connect it. So, it actually it is there, the sense objects, right? So, I think that's what you were showing also. The sound is the first one; it is coming, and then again from there, the verse says that the Lord is glancing over that along with the material energy plus time, then the other elements are coming, right? Other sense objects are coming one after other.
Yes.
So, I mean, yeah, no, it's little hard to understand. I mean, but I think the analogy that you gave, right? So makes sense. So, I mean, how everything, even in our day-to-day world, also we conceptualize first, right? The subtle thing comes first within our mind, so then it gets formed. But yeah, so
And therefore, the demigods and mind come. So, false ego plus goodness is the demigods and minds, and then comes the senses.
it's
So that tells us that the many of the demigods, their bodies are made up of mind and senses.
yes, yeah,
They
that's
don't have the gross bodies.
yes, yeah,
May not be all, but those who are involved in the primary creations, for them must be. We have heard that Lord Brahma's body is made up of only intelligence.
yeah, intelligence.
Likewise.
Yes, that makes sense.
All right, so we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.